One block in West Baltimore became the center of an investigation that would eventually stretch across multiple jurisdictions, trigger 11 search warrants, and lead authorities to seize firearms, narcotics, vehicles, and more than $200,000 in cash. By the time the operation was over, 8 alleged members of a group known as the Carey Boyz had been indicted. Officials claimed the organization was helping drive violence in the area. The public announcement focused on the arrests. The real story is how investigators got there. The case begins on the 1700 block of North Carey Street in Baltimore's Sandtown-Winchester neighborhood. For years, the area had been one of the city's most heavily scrutinized neighborhoods when it came to violence, drug trafficking, and repeat offenders. By early 2023, investigators had reportedly turned their attention toward a group operating around that block. At first glance, it looked like another neighborhood narcotics investigation. What followed would become much larger. According to authorities, detectives spent months building information about the people they believed were connected to the organization. The focus wasn't a single arrest. There wasn't one search warrant. Investigators were attempting to understand how the entire network allegedly operated. The investigation reportedly began in January of 2023. As detectives worked the case, authorities said they began recovering evidence tied to the operation. Early seizures included narcotics, packaged for street distribution, along with firearms. Instead of ending the case there, investigators kept going. That decision says a lot. Law enforcement believed there was a larger organization sitting behind what they were finding. Rather than targeting a single individual, the investigation expanded toward identifying multiple alleged members and understanding the structure behind the operation. According to public reporting, authorities eventually identified what they believed was a hierarchy inside the group. Investigators alleged that some individuals played leadership roles, while others operated closer to the street level. That distinction would become important later when arrests were announced. Most neighborhood drug investigations never make statewide headlines. Many end with a handful of arrests and disappear from public attention. The Carey Boyz investigation moved in a different direction. Officials connected the group to Baltimore's group violence reduction strategy. That meant investigators were not only looking at narcotics activity. Authorities publicly described the alleged organization as part of a network contributing to violence within the Western District. Whether every allegation could ultimately be proven in court would be determined later, but investigators clearly viewed the organization as significant enough to devote substantial resources toward building the case. By the spring of 2023, the investigation had reached a point where detectives were preparing coordinated enforcement action. One of the most interesting parts of this case is how much of the investigation never appears in the headlines. Most news reports focused on the arrests and the numbers. The full case file goes much deeper into the evidence recoveries, the locations involved, the alleged hierarchy, and everything investigators publicly revealed throughout the operation. Then came the phase that changed everything. On June 6, authorities executed 11 search warrants connected to the investigation. The operation stretched beyond North Carey Street. According to reporting, investigators targeted residences and vehicles connected to people they believed were tied to the organization. The searches reached into multiple areas, including locations outside Baltimore City. This is usually the point where a case transitions from an investigation into an enforcement operation. Months of surveillance, intelligence gathering, evidence collection, and investigative work suddenly become action. By the end of those searches, authorities reported recovering additional firearms, large quantities of suspected narcotics, marijuana, and more than $200,000 in cash. The scale of the recovery immediately transformed the public perception of the case. This was no longer being presented as a corner-level operation. Investigators were describing something much larger. When prosecutors announced the case, 8 individuals were identified as alleged members of the Carey Boyz organization. Authorities described different roles inside the alleged network. Public reporting identified an alleged supplier. Others were described as occupying mid-level positions. Additional individuals were identified as street-level participants. That structure is one of the reasons the case attracted attention. Investigators were not describing isolated activity. They were describing what they believed was an organized operation. Whether that allegation would ultimately withstand every challenge in court is a separate question. But from the perspective of investigators, the hierarchy was a major part of the case. The charges announced publicly included narcotics conspiracy allegations, distribution allegations, firearm-related offenses, and additional counts connected to the investigation. Officials stated the combined exposure attached to the indictment was approximately 887 years. That number quickly became one of the most repeated details in media coverage, not because anyone was sentenced to that amount of time, but because it illustrated how aggressively prosecutors were pursuing the case. What makes the Carey Boyz case interesting isn't just the arrests, it's the process. Investigators started with a single section of West Baltimore. Months later, they were executing warrants across multiple locations, recovering firearms, narcotics, cash, and building a case against 8 alleged members of an organization authorities believed was helping drive violence in the area. The indictment became the headline. The investigation is the story. The public record tells us how the operation ended. The deeper question is how investigators built the case in the first place. The full premium Carey Boyz case file breaks down the evidence recoveries, warrant locations, defendant roles, official statements, recovered firearms, narcotic seizures, and everything publicly available surrounding the investigation. You'll also find dozens of additional Baltimore case files, federal gang investigations, homicide files, surveillance breakdowns, and indictment reports inside the archive at TopTrendReportTV.com. Because long before the arrests made headlines, the story started on a single block of North Carey Street. And that part rarely makes the news.
Police in West Baltimore have taken down an alleged drug trafficking organization, indicting 8 members in the process.
As WMAR 2 News' Jeff Hager tells us tonight, they say the Carey Boyz fueled violence in one of the city's most dangerous neighborhoods.
Officers in marked police cars are a visible presence here along North Avenue on one of the mean streets of West Baltimore, but it's here in the shadows along a side street, North Carey Street, where it's alleged the Carey Boyz were dealing drugs and death.
The joint effort in collaboration with the regional law enforcement agents resulted in 8 criminal charges on 8 members ranging from the ages of 19 to 59. 7 of those members have prior arrests, including various narcotics, armed robbery violations, as well as assault.
In January, BPD's Group Violence Unit launched an investigation into the group, following extensive diversion efforts in Sandtown-Winchester to send traffickers down a different path.
There is no joy in sending black men to prison, and this group self-selected for focused enforcement attention because of their continued involvement in violence.
During the 5-month-long investigation, detectives seized 2 firearms, 1,100 vials of cocaine, and 1,500 gel capsules tainted with fentanyl. But it didn't stop there. They obtained 11 search warrants for vehicles and homes in Cockeysville, Windsor Mill, Elkridge, as well as Baltimore, and hit pay dirt.
7 firearms, approximately a half kilo of suspected cocaine, approximately 890 grams of suspected cocaine, approximately 3,712 grams of suspected marijuana, and over 200,000 in various denominations.
Statistics show 3 out of 4 murders in West Baltimore are tied to group violence. And police say this is one less group that could now contribute to that deadly equation. In West Baltimore, Jeff Hager, WMAR 2 News.